everyone, Gaara here and welcome to the first card reveal video of the upcoming expansion Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. Today they have released a total of 21 new cards and I'm going over them in a bit. Let me first get into the new affiliation system they announced, and that is going to be pretty much that there will be 3 so-called Triforce classes. There's going to be class cards that are going to be available for 3 different classes together. The 3 categories of those tri-classes are going to be the Grimy Goons, which combine Hunter, Paladin and Warrior class cards. The second cluster is going to be Cabal, which combines Mage, Priest and Warlock class cards. And the third tribe is going to be Jade Lotus, which combines Druid, Rogue and Shaman. And I'm super excited about this new way of playing the game, the new way of how they're experimenting with new cards. This is going to be very exciting. I hope those cards are going to be playable and those cards are not going to end like the Inspire mechanic, which was pretty much unplayable. I'm going to show you some of the new Tri-class cards in a bit. So far my first impression is, it sounds super amazing, but from a competitive standpoint, some of the cards just seem to have really weak stats. They seem to be like a gimmicky cards so far, so I'm very curious if they're going to announce some of those cards that are going to be played in competitive format. With that being said, I've seen some crazy legendaries they have announced, and Reno decks are going to be amazing till the next rotation happens, and I'm super excited and I can't wait to try them out myself. Without further ado, let's get right into the new cards. Let's start this off with the neutral cards they have released so far. There's 4 neutral cards in total, and the very first neutral card they have announced is the second rate Bruiser. This is a 5 mana 4/5 taunt minion that gets its cost reduced by your opponent having 3 minions or more, basically. So on the first sight, this card looks like something I would play in a Reno deck, because Reno deck just plays so many different good cards. I'm not sure, because we already have usually a lot of good cards in the 5 mana slot already. We are looking at a Druid deck. We are playing Azure Drakes, Harrison Jones, Druid of the Claws, Nourishes, and you would not really find a room for the second rate Bruiser. But if you're looking at Reno Lock, for example, we can easily make room for a card like this. In a meta where Shaman and Zoo are pretty dominant and popular, a card like this does really excel, because you will oftentimes face a board where your opponent has like 3 weaker minions or just totems, and then you can play a free 4/5 mana taunt for just 3 mana, and that sounds really amazing. I actually think this card is playable even if you don't have the cost reduction. Worst case scenario, you play a 5 mana 4/5 taunt, which is alright. And yeah, that's for this card. So let's get into the second neutral card they have announced, the Big Time Racketeer. It's a 6 mana Battlecry minion with just 1/1 stats, but the Battlecry effect is to summon a 6/6 ogre, so you have a total stats of 7/7 if you wanna say it, for 6 mana, which is slightly above average, I would say. The cool thing about this card is that it has insane combo potential with the Bronzebeard, for example, and I'm really looking forward to what people come up with when they are playing around with this card. From a competitive standpoint, if you look at a card that is very similar in stats, it is the Boldarfist Augur or Cairn Bloodhoof, and we really don't see those cards being played. We see Cairn being played in Enzoth decks. I don't think that the meta is fitting for a card like this in competitive play, but there is definitely crazy combos possible with this card, and I'm really looking forward for people playing around with this card and what they're gonna come up with. The next card they have announced is the Patches the Pirate. It is a 1 mana 1/1 Murloc with charge. After you play a pirate, summon this minion from your deck. It seems like a very powerful card in an aggressive deck, in a pirate, aggro pirate rogue, so I'm looking forward to Reynard building this deck once again. It also would fit in a gang up deck, because every time you play a pirate you get like endless amount. You can do some crazy combos with this card. Yeah, you gang up this guy, and if you play a pirate you will just get 3 of them on the battlefield, so basically you just refill the board, you will just summon all of them on your board. It's kind of crazy. In the other decks I'm not so sure, maybe you play this also. Yeah, definitely in a Face Warrior I can see this card being played, because you just get this out of your deck. So this card seems to be playable for sure, even in competitive play. If those archetypes like aggressive rogue, pirate warrior are playable, then we will definitely see this card. Very exciting. The next card is Ninja the Flying Star, another Murloc. Is a 5 mana 2/4 stealthed Murloc. Whenever this attacks and kills a minion, summon 2 Murlocs from your deck. This doesn't work like Barnes, it is like the charged Murloc, where it actually thins out your deck. So this card might potentially see play in a Murloc Paladin deck, because you cycle out your deck very quickly. You don't really want to draw your Murlocs, but you also summon them on the board. It is really powerful, and this minion has stealth, and a 2/4 Murloc with stealth is very difficult to kill. How much will it actually hurt your OTK combo? I think it will hurt your combo by a lot, but you can get a lot of value very quickly from your anything. So you might build a deck that just wants to get the anything out as fast as possible, and it's going to be like value wise as strong as possible. And right now I'm not so sure which card you could cut for this one, but I see this card having potential. It's very difficult to rate it without playing it actually, to see how it feels, because the stats on it are super mediocre, and for it to actually kill something is also going to be very difficult. But on the other hand, it can just sit on the board, and if the meta is a little bit slow, you can actually afford as a Paladin to to have a minion on the board that doesn't really do too much. But you can also combine it with equality. For example, you have this minion on the board and you play equality, you kill the opponent's big minion, let's say Malygos or Ragnaros, whatever, and then you summon 2 Murlocs. That seems like a great synergy. So the card definitely has potential. It's difficult to rate yet. It's a very cool and interesting card, and I'm really looking forward to it. So the next type of cards they have announced are the Cabal affiliation cards. They only released 2 of this tribe so far, and this is the very first one they have announced, the Cabal Courier. It is a Battlecry Discover, a Mage, Priest or Warlock card. It costs 3 mana and it has 2/2 stats. And I've actually discussed this card a little bit with the Meta Snapshot people from Tempo Storm. The stats are really underwhelming for 3 mana, and in a time where people play the Totem Golem, this card will really not do too much. And how good is a random priest card? Really, for classes like Mage and Warlock doesn't really seem too appealing, as it looks like you get 1 Mage card, 1 Priest card and 1 Warlock card every single time. This card seems to be just mediocre. It might find definitely room for experimentations, because you can play this card in 3 different classes. You can play it in all versions of Mage, all versions of Priest and all versions of Warlock. The choices might be too large, so you will not get something consistently enough what you're looking for. But the concept of these new types of cards is amazing, and I'm really enjoying it, that they're, and I can't stress this enough, that they are experimenting with more complicated effects, and that they are finally taking advantage of this being a digital card game. And so you can create cards like this one, for example. So I don't think this will see competitive play, at least for now, with what we have announced. We'll definitely see play in some Reno decks. So the second Cabal card they have announced is a super exciting one. It is Kazakus, or however you want to pronounce it. It is a battle cry. If your deck has no duplicates, create a custom spell, and oh boy. So first of all, how this is going to work is basically like Reno. You will try to build a deck with just one-offs, and right now it really looks like it is going to be possible because we got so many good new cards, and it is a Cabal archetype card, which means you can play this in a Reno Mage deck, Reno Priest deck, and a Reno Warlock deck. And Reno Warlock deck seems to be already viable, and we have already seen Reno Mages being played by people like Stanudachi. And how this is gonna work is as the following. As soon as you play this card, you get this card selection screen where you can choose to create a 1 cost spell, or a 5 mana cost spell, or a 10 mana cost spell. And in the show they chose the 10 mana cost spell. And as soon as they chose 10 mana cost spell, they have this creation screen where you can choose to copy 3 cards from your opponent's deck and put them into your hand, which is insane amount of value, and deal 6 damage to all minions, which is a crazy powerful AoE effect, or draw 3 cards if you are out of cards. It's just very situational, very powerful effect according to situations. If you want to play or win the fatigue game, you just choose to draw 3 cards from your opponent's deck. If you need to clear the opponent's board in case he plays Zoo, you just deal 6 damage, and if you're out of cards, you draw 3 cards. But that is not all, it goes further. You get to choose another effect, a second effect on top of the already chosen effect. And the second effect for 10 mana was summon 3 friendly minions that die this game. Absolutely insane. Stoneless Oil, gain 10 armor, or transform all minions into 1/1 sheep. So you can do a crazy combination. You can draw 3 cards, heal for 10. This is even better than heal for 10. You gain 10 armor as a priest, as a mage, or a warlock, which is amazing if you basically face a Murloc Paladin deck and you're like, if the meta slows down and you're worried that Murloc Paladin will just dominate, this will really help you to get out of reach from the OTK combo, which is amazing. Yeah, you get a crazy powerful AoE effect, and then you just afterwards you resummon 3 friendly minions that die this game. Just absolutely ridiculous. The viability of this card will depend on how powerful the 1 mana and 5 mana spells are going to be, but from what we've seen for the 10 mana spells, it is going to be insanely powerful, and it is going to be almost impossible for your opponent to play around this card because you can have 27 different spells that you can create. But it is amazing. Cards like this are amazing, but at the same time I'm super sad because next year in the next rotation Reno Jackson is going to rotate out, and then cards like this are going to be much weaker, but till then we will have a lot of fun with building decks. So the next card tribe they have announced is the Jade Lotus tribe, and they only announced 1 card of this tribe so far, and the 1 card they have announced is the Lotus Agents. The Lotus Agents are a 5 mana card with 5 attack and 3 health, battle cry, discover, a Druid, Rogue or Shaman card. So this card is going to be available for Druid, Rogue and Shaman, even though the discover effect is extremely powerful. We can compare this card to Azure Drake, and Azure Drake is a 5 mana card with 4/4 stats that draws you a card and gives you a spell power. So I think that drawing a card from your own deck is probably better than just discovering a Druid, Rogue or Shaman card. It is not like where you discover one specific area, like let's say Death Rattle minions, or you discover spells where you know the odds of getting something specific. I think this is too widely spread and too random, and on top of it the stats for this card are really mediocre, so I don't think this card will see any play, but I really like this effect. It looks very awesome. They listened to the community, the feedback about Discover was amazing. Yeah, I'm looking forward about the other Jade Lotus cards, because this is definitely a very cool tribe. Yeah, but this card seems to be unplayable. So the next tribe they have announced are the Grimy Goons, and so far there's only 1 card released by this tribe, And the one card they have announced is the Grimstreet Informant. So it is a 2 mana minion with 1/1 stats. So basically very similar to the Navis Engineer. And it has a pretty powerful battlecry discover effect, I would say. Since you can play the Grimstreet Informant in Paladin, Warrior and Hunter, it might be different how much you can utilize the 1/1 stats. I think classes like Warrior can afford to have a 1/1 minion, or Paladin already plays basically hero power on turn 2. Like for example for Paladin doesn't really have a real turn 2 play, but do you really want to have 1/1 stats like Navis Engineer as a Paladin? So right now I feel like this card has just 2 weak stats and will probably not see any playing. It's too widely spread what you can get. It's completely random. Yes, you can get some crazy cards. Yes, we can get some Tyrions in Warrior, which is insane, or Heal in Hunter, or Gorehowl in Paladin, whatever. You can get some crazy stuff with this card, but to play it proactively on turn 2 seems kind of weak. But if you want to combine it with cards like Bronzebeard, then suddenly this card looks insanely powerful. And yeah, if you want to play the value game, and then you also play Emperor in your deck, and then you suddenly play this card, it suddenly seems very, very strong. So I definitely like this card. I don't think it's easy to say now if this card is going to be playable. It's definitely a very unique and a very cool effect. Can't stress this enough. And very good for competitive Hearthstone, just to have a lot of options that can decide the outcome of your game. The stats seem like very weak for it to be playable, but we will see. There's definitely some cool combos possible with this card. So let's get finally into the class cards. Let's start this off with Warrior as the first class. They have only announced one Warrior card so far. The one card they have announced is I Know a Guy. It's a very funny name. Discover a Taunt minion. Pretty cool effect. I think they're really pushing the Reno types. Like, I'm already personally playing Reno Warrior in case you're following my Beat the Ladder series. If they introduce more cards like this, I mean, it really pushes the Reno archetype. Usually the thing is that Warrior doesn't really have anything to do on turn 1. So if you just draw this card very early, you can discover a very cheap Taunt minion. The problem in Hearthstone right now is that the taunt minions are not really powerful, else you would run them in your deck. If cards like Sludge Belcher would still be around, this would be a different story. But right now, one of the better ones is probably Senjin, but there's a lot of really, really bad taunt minions. So right now, I don't think this card is too good. They have announced already a new neutral taunt minion, which seems pretty powerful. So it really increases the value of this card. Overall, I mean, it gives you a card that is not from your deck. Yes, it gets increased value in late game. You really have to do the math behind this card. What is the average mana cost of the taunt minion? I haven't done this yet, and it's impossible to say yet because they also are going to still announce another 110 cards or something like that. It's a decent card. Basically, you try to get a cheap taunt minion against aggressive deck and an expensive taunt minion against control decks. And it also pushes the Bolster Warrior. Woo! Not quite sure how excited I am about that. But yeah, interesting card. Doesn't seem to be very powerful in competitive play. The next class is Warlock, and they haven't announced any cards for Warlock so far. The next class is Shaman, and pretty much the same. They haven't announced any class cards for Shaman as well. The next class is Rogue, and we have finally 2 cards they have released for the Rogue class. The first card they have released is the Counterfeit Coin, which is basically a coin in a card form. And I discussed this also with some of the Meta Snapshot people, and it is actually quite interesting. They don't believe that you would actually play this card, and the way how the people in the live ticker from the Blizzard describe this card is making the Rogue more miraculous, and you can definitely do some crazy stuff with this card in your auctioneer turn. But if you pay an actual card for the coin, would you actually play the coin? And so far it doesn't really look like you would. You wouldn't pay the card slot for this card, but I'm definitely curious if people decide to play this as like a one-off, like a niche card, or even in Arena Rogue, for example. You can definitely do crazy stuff. Like, Rogue really benefits from the coin, and I can't wait for the discussions around this card, because this card seems to be playable, but then again, it seems to be too weak for spending a card slot on it. The next Rogue card is the Lotus Assassin. It is a stealth minion. Whenever this minion kills an enemy, gains stealth or regains stealth. It has 5/5 stats for 5 mana, which is solid. It has stealth, so it is basically a Stranglethorn Tiger for Rogue, with basically a power creep of the Stranglethorn Tiger. Basically a stronger effect than the Stranglethorn Tiger. You can trade off this minion and, let's say, trade off with an Azure Drake, which is a popular 5 mana minion that is played right now, and then regain stealth, and then trade with another minion. So value wise, this card is very powerful. From what I've heard so far, people believe this card is not playable. Right now in the current Rogue archetypes, the deck slots are very filled already with very powerful Rogue class cards, and right now what Blizzard has already introduced so many powerful new Rogue class cards, like the Xerael Poison Mind, and it already doesn't barely see any play, even though the card is very powerful. And the reason for it is that Rogue has already so powerful cards that you already play, and this is another powerful card which you will probably not play, because Rogue already plays so many powerful cards, and you would not cut an Azure Drake, for example, to play this card. So it is a pretty decent card, but you will probably not see this card being played, except in maybe, let's say, Arena Rogue, which plays for the board, tries to get board control, and this card seems to be pretty decent to get board control. But in a normal Miracle Rogue, you would not cut anything. You can set up some crazy OTK maybe as well, but as I said, you also don't really play the Stranglethorn Tiger in Rogue ever, so this card will probably not see too much play. Let's move on to the next class, which is Priest, and we have 3 new cards for Priest. And I'm super excited about this, because the Priest cards seem to be extremely powerful. I'm pretty convinced that even with just the 3 cards that are announced, that Priest is going to be a very powerful class after the next expansion. So the first card they have announced is the Cabal Talon Priest. It is basically a Darkshire cultist, just more powerful in my opinion. It is a 3/4 minion that has the Battlecry effect, give a friendly minion +3 health. Like, what the hell? The problem with this card is, if you wanna play this card on curve, you need a 1-drop or a 2-drop, and Priest still doesn't have any 1-drop or a 2-drop. But even without having a 1 or 2-drop, the card has already extremely powerful vanilla stats. And the sad part about cards like this is that they just have very powerful stats, basically. So there's no strategic aspect surrounding this card. So this will not really increase the skill of the deck you will play this card in. When you have 3 mana and you have this card in your hand, you will not think about, do I do some wait for play? Shall I play this crazy minion with this crazy stats for 3 mana, or shall I just not do it? Usually you will just end up playing this card. The same follows the same principle as playing the Totem Golem on turn 2. And this card has just a ridiculous upside. If you have a minion on the board on turn 3, you just buff it by 3 health. It is, in my opinion, more powerful than having the Death Rattle +3 health, because your opponent can play around it. He will just kill the other minions, so it's a more powerful minion than the Dark Cultist. It will definitely see play, and it will definitely push Priest to the max. You can combo it with cards like Brun. You can coin out Brun into this card, which is like, what the hell? You buff the Brun by 6 health to make it basically an unkillable 2/10 minion. We will probably see 2 of this card in every single Priest deck. So the next Priest card they have announced is the Draconic Operative, and it is a 5 mana dragon with 5 attack and 6 health. battle cry if you're holding a dragon, discover a card in your opponent's deck. Absolutely busted card, and as you guys know, if you're following my beta letter series, my very first episode was featuring Dragon Priest, and if you guys are following me over the years, I was basically one of the first players that played Dragon Priest in tournaments, and I'm playing Dragon Priest since then. I didn't lose my hope. I'm pretty sad that dragons are going to be rotated out in the next rotation that is going to happen in probably February, March. I don't know when that is going to happen, but till then I'm really excited that they're introducing new dragons, new dragon class cards, and they tweeted out in the past that they're really trying to push the Dragon Priest archetype, so Priest has more viable deck types besides just the boring Arcanized Circle Priest, let's call it like that. We have gotten another archetype in the last expansion, which was Karazhan, the Resurrect Priest. So with this card we are pushing the Dragon Priest archetype even further, and a 5-6 minion. The problem about Azure Drake in the current Dragon Priest is that it is a must play just because you have nothing better, and this card will replace Azure Drake pretty much. Discovering a card from your opponent's deck is very powerful. I think that discover a card from your deck is more powerful than draw a card, because you can compare this to tracking pretty much, because you can choose, and usually your opponent runs good cards, so you can choose one of 3 good cards, and if it's Rogue and he has Deadly Poison, you can choose to not pick the bad card you get from this effect. So overall, I think it is a very powerful card, and it also helps you to fight the control decks in the fatigue battle, because you get a card from your opponent's deck, and it is a well started minion. I really like this card. The last priest card they have revealed is the Potion of Madness. Whoa, another situational priest card. Gain control of an enemy minion with 2 or less attack until the end of your turn. It is a situational card, but I think it is a very powerful card, because priest struggles to deal with aggressive decks. This is another very cheap way to deal with aggressive minions. I really like this card. It is pretty much a very cheap version of Shadow Madness. Shadow Madness steals a minion with 3 or less attack, and it costs 4 mana, and to steal a minion with 2 or less attack just costs 1 mana. So I think it is a very powerful card for 1 mana. It will definitely see play. Yeah, I like this more than Shadow Madness, to be honest, and I can definitely see this card being played. Let's move on to the next class, Paladin. 3 cards have been announced for this class. The first card is Getaway Kodo. It's a 1 mana secret. Whenever a friendly minion dies, return it to your hand. A pretty powerful effect for a 1 mana secret. I'm pretty much surprised how creative they are for the Paladin 1 mana secrets, because you cannot really make them too powerful, because the secrets cost 1 mana, and it's another very cool card for 1 mana. I'm super excited. Yes, people really don't want to see Mysterious Challenger coming back. This might help Mysterious Challenger come back. Maybe, we will see. Hopefully not, but it seems to be a pretty powerful secret. The second Paladin card is Small Time Recruits. Draw 3 1-cost minions from your deck. Seems to be very powerful in aggressive Paladin deck. So far you were forced to play Divine Favor as your only card draw card, but if you play against, let's say, a Zoo deck, Divine Favor is really bad, because your opponent is also just flooding the board and just playing all his cards from your hand. But with this card you can just redraw a bunch of small creatures. It seems to be very good, so I really enjoyed that they're pushing also aggressive archetypes, not just control archetypes, and this card will really help an aggressive / Divine Shield kind of Paladin. So I think this card will see play in a completely new archetype of Paladin. So the next card is the Wicker Flame Burn Bristle. It is a Paladin legendary, and it is a small cost legendary. I'm always super excited if they don't announce just those 10 mana legendaries that just have another crazy effect for 10 mana, and they're probably unplayable anyways because the meta is too fast. But this card has 2 attack, 2 health, 3 mana. It has Taunt Divine Shield, which is already very powerful for 3 mana, and the effect is very exciting. Damage dealt by this minion also heals your hero, and the way how this tooltip is written, it should work like so: whenever your opponent attacks into it and when you attack with this card, you always heal by the amount of damage this card dealt. So if you would buff this card with Kings, for example, you would heal even more. So this card seems to be very, very powerful in an aggressive Paladin deck, probably as well, but also in all defensive control Paladin decks. More cards like this, Blizzard. I'm super excited to play this card. Double thumbs up. It's probably my favorite card so far. As the next class we have Mage, and they only released 1 class card for Mage, and the 1 card they have announced is the Manic Soulcaster. It is a 3 mana minion with basically spider tank stats, 3 attack and 4 health. Battlecry: choose a friendly minion, shuffle a copy into your deck. Seems to be a pretty mediocre Battlecry effect, because usually the way how Hearthstone works nowadays is you play a minion, I kill it, I play a minion, my opponent kills it. But this card, I'm not so sure if you really want to shuffle a minion from your board into your deck. This card seems to be very good for value game. It is a very well started card for 3 mana. You can definitely make use out of this card in a Reno Mage deck, like let's say Bran plus Manic Soulcaster, then you get 2 Brans suddenly into your deck. So you have cool new ways to actually get additional cards into your deck, and from those cards you can get even more value. So it has a great strategic aspect. So this card also might finally make Control Mage work, so Strife Girl. Yeah, it's definitely a cool card. Good stats, seems playable, the effect doesn't seem powerful. I'm definitely excited. A lot of these cards are very difficult to rate. Like right now you would not play this card in any deck, but if Reno Mage is viable, you would play this card. If Control Mage would be viable, you would also play this card. So right now you would not play this card, as I said. But I'm really looking forward to all the creative deck builders out there. As the next class we have Hunter, and they only released 1 card for Hunter so far. It is a new weapon, the Piranha Launcher, and whenever your hero attacks, summon a 1/1 Piranha. This card is like pretty much just unplayable. It has way too weak power, even though the Piranhas are beast minions and you just get like pretty much 4 Piranhas. Let's say in the best case scenario you attack with this weapon 4 times and you get 4 Piranhas, maximum value out of this card. It's still pretty bad value. Maybe they made this card to nerf the Hunter class cards you can discover, just because the Hunter class cards overall are also very powerful. Just rebalance that a little bit. So yeah, pretty weak card, is pretty much unplayable, and we won't see this card being played in competitive Hearthstone. So let's finally move on to the last class, Druid, and they have released 2 cards so far for Druid. And the first card they have released is the Pilfered Power. It is a 3 mana spell, gain an empty mana crystal for each friendly minion. And that is a very, very interesting effect. First thing that comes to my mind is you can combine this with Living Roots. For example, against Priest you can just play Living Roots and then it will most likely survive, and then you play this and then you get 2 mana crystals for 3 mana, which is pretty damn good value. And another thing that came to my mind, also you can just hold off to the Living Roots for turn 4 and then you play them and combine it with this card. Yeah, you just get 2 mana crystals. Another thing that comes to my mind is you can combine this with Stealth Minion. You could play the Jungle Panther, the 2 mana beast minion with Stealth, and this, if you just don't you just spit in Stealth, then you play the Pilfered Power, so it is like a 3 mana Wild Growth which is just a worse version of Wild Growth. So to make this card really powerful, you should get at least 2 mana crystals. And a very, very big downside about this card, which you should not forget, is if you don't have a minion on the board, this is a completely dead card. So I expect that this card will be cyclable as well. So it is a very interesting card, and I have to think about this card more. If you can play it, yeah, the main thing that comes to my mind is really to play stealth minions and to get like just a quicker ramp out. I can't rate the power level of this card yet, especially with not knowing all the new cards that might have great synergy with this card. And here we are finally at the final card of the first initial release or announcement of the upcoming expansion, and it is a Druid legendary for 10 mana, Kun the Forgotten King. It has 7 attack and 7 health for 10 mana. Choose one, gain 10 armor, or refresh your mana crystals. So it's basically a minion you can play for 0 mana if you can get it out for 10 mana, because it resets your mana crystals. It is not quite 10 a complete mana. Like if you play, let's say, double Innervate at 6 mana, you just refresh 6 mana crystals, but it's still kinda insane because you can always utilize your Innervates with this card. I think this really pushes Ramp Druid once again. There's crazy combinations possible. You can play Aviana on 10 mana with this card, and then you choose to refresh your mana crystals, and then you have another 10 mana, and then you can basically flood your board with anything, with 10 Ragnaroses, because Aviana reduces the mana cost of all minions. So absolutely insane combo potential. And if you want, you can just heal for 10, and Druid really lacks healing as well. Even though we gained a lot of heal cards, this really definitely pushes the Ramp Druid archetype. I really like this card. It's pretty sick combo potential. Yeah, can't wait to build decks with this card. And that's it for the first card reveal. I'm really excited about the upcoming expansion, and stay tuned for the second part where I'm going over the next batch of cards of the Gadgetzan expansion. And don't forget to thumbs up if you enjoyed this video.